2, 1, and we are live! Hello! It's been a long time since we've come to you to bring you 30 Days of Thought from Culture Matters with my buddy Paul Lucido and myself, Andrew Berman, where we deep dive into Doran's 30 Days of Thought. 30 Days of Thought is a book that is designed for you to read in just one of the many sections, and take actually those sections, write down your own notes, perhaps record a video, and share your thoughts on that video. Sometimes you're sharing the video on your own phone and just keeping it on your own phone. Sometimes you're doing it live like Paul and I did here. But today we are doing a topic that we actually avoided. This is, just to be transparent about this, going back, actually, I think when we first started talking about this, I think we felt uncomfortable about this. I know I did. I felt uneasy about this, but the whole practice of why we do this, Paul and I started doing this practice so we can become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And this is uncomfortable for me to share my raw thoughts. Paul kind of felt the same way. But so today we are going to be covering humans shouldn't be cops. I will read the abstract, and then from there we're going to go listen to Paul's notes and his thoughts about humans shouldn't be cops. And then we'll go into a little conversation about this. So here's a quick abstract. If we are to grow, to evolve, and dissolve the chains of primal man, we must rally to a cause and rise to our keeper voices. We must fight a new and greater fight, that of the educated human. We must outsource our muscle to the non-organic and take heed of the coming signs of evolution. It is better for us to decide to love artificial intelligence because humans should not be cops. Mr. Lucido?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for reading out that abstract. It's this one is clearly a controversial topic, and the reason I initially was going to avoid even us having any dialogue about it was, politically where it might sit. The idea is, what do we mean by humans should be cops? And so where I come from and my interpretation of where Jay is coming from is, he is basically saying that humans should evolve to the point where we are in ourselves should not having to be policing one another. We should not be imposing our will, one human over another. That we should be seeking a higher education, rise above that. And as far as the policing goes, and that leaving that jurisdiction in the hands of artificial intelligence, which I really have a problem with. So when I started to think about this particular subject, there are many things that popped into my mind. First of all, RoboCop came to mind. Judge Dredd came to mind. And Minority Report came to mind. Clearly, I like movies, and I've seen all three of them. And most all three of those speak to a dystopian environment. Obviously, in some cases, even almost, a post-apocalyptic, where they're trying to, deal with the inner city issues, metropolitan, and trying to bring some sense of utopian back to civilization, back to that environment. The reality of it is, when you think about it, look, the last thing I want to be dealing with is having Ed 209 standing over me telling me, you have 15 seconds to drop your weapon and comply. That's the last thing I want to ever have happen. Or some cyborg like RoboCop who's coming and making certain judgment calls, and or even someone like Judge Dredd where you're looking at a society that the cop is not only the judge, they're the jury, and they're the executioner. If we leave judgment to artificial intelligence, the question I have is, does artificial intelligence have the ability to remain subjective? Can there be a machine consciousness? Because people are subjective. It's open for interpretation. That's the point. When you're making judgment calls on other people, when we leave it up to law enforcement to make these decisions, there are still feelings, emotions, interpretation, all kinds of different aspects that fall into that affect that decision. There's also the issue, which we'll get into a little bit here, about free will versus determinism. Essentially, having the ability to make a choice between, different courses of action on the side of free will versus literally determinism, where events are determined by cause and effect. And some of which, according to scientists and some of our neuroscientists, neurobiologists, believe that that's happening at a very deep level, a level whereby you're completely unaware of that these decisions are already being made. And it's very difficult to get your head around that, because we all certainly believe and perceive the fact that we make our own decisions, that we have the power of choice. The question is, do we really? And then you've got minority report, which comes into this, where you have precognition, whereby you actually have, these entities that have the ability to preconceive what's going to happen ahead of time and put that fire out before it actually happens. Very interesting. So with that being said, let's just kind of dialogue back and forth. Again, I don't know that I am personally in agreement with the idea of putting the law enforcement in the hands of artificial intelligence. I get it. There could be machine learning. There could be all kinds of things, but there could also be human error, because who programs the machine? Who makes the decision that the machine is going to make these decisions? I get it. A machine could be more objective, look at things objectively, leaving all feelings out of it and all biases out of it, versus a human, which is more subjective, which can bring empathy into the equation, amongst other things. So let's, what do you say? Dialogue from there.
Or it could be someone with malintent, like Dick Jones. Use a RoboCop analogy. I mean, like Dick Jones programmed the directives of RoboCop. You obviously that's this is like our biggest fear for AI. We're worried actually that when AI becomes smarter than humans for general purpose AI, it's going to whoever's programming those initial directives is going to hold actually some ginormous power that is a scary thing. So, but let's put actually in this perfect world where because listen, I mean, I'm not taking away from what actually what police do today. I mean, I feel for them. I feel actually because they're coming into their situations knowing actually in many cases from past experiences, there are certain situations that they're coming into saying, okay, listen, I know, so here in New York, one of the projects, in Brooklyn is called the Pink Houses. They know actually every time that they're going to the pink houses in Brooklyn, that is probably going to be similar situation. If it's a domestic violence situation, they're going to come in. They're not going to be welcomed in that situation. They have to treat actually that situation based on their former experiences. And sometimes, I guess maybe that could allow them to not observe protocol properly. I don't know. I mean, but I know actually, humans are flawed because we create actually a bias based on our past experiences. Machines in theory, we could program to maybe not do that. So I don't know, actually, that the solution is AI to be policing us. I just know that humans are flawed. Our judgment is based on our past experiences, which could possibly leave us to be biased. So that's
Well,
my feelings that I got, actually, from reading this, and you know.
well, there's two things here to be understood. So you and I are obviously talking about the idea of us being uncomfortable with perhaps having machines making judgment calls. I want to kind of go into a little bit of a deeper conversation, if we can, a little bit here. If you look at what's classified as determinism, and we do believe, let's say for a moment here, let's adopt the ideology, or the philosophy is a better way to say it, that we're all predisposed to certain ways of thinking based on DNA, genetic makeup, genome, if you will, based on experiences as you had that are being fed into this machine up here over time, all helps shape how we react to certain situations. But there's more of a causical thing happening at a very deep level. And the question is, can you override what's happening at that deep level? I don't know. I like to believe that I can. I like to believe that when I'm presented with a situation, that I can make a judgment call and hopefully make the right one, taking into account things that maybe a machine can't do, having some empathy. Maybe I've been through that experience myself, so I know, which could create biases on how I might respond.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, in a perfect society where you've got, let's say, an AI, an artificial intelligence that may have the ability to even learn based on certain experiences that are being fed into its computer, and it begins to learn how to discern and navigate. For example, if we have machine cyber cops pulling you over when you maybe make a mistake driving, some police officers might look at it and go, you know what, in this situation, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let it off. I can see what happened here. Versus a machine is very black and white. There is no gray area. It's either you're innocent or you're guilty.
Red light cameras.
Yeah, red light cameras. I mean, so I get it, but it's all based on information, and then somebody, some person, some entity has to make the final decision whether, based on this evidence, this is, I think the decision that needs to be made, as well as cameras, as well as consensus. Okay, I mean, who determines what the law is going to be, and what that AI is going to be fed to determine these are the guidelines. This is a tricky area to navigate. So what I would like to talk about now, if we can, is Jay's message. And that message is above just putting the law in the hands of others. He is trying to help get across the point that we need to elevate ourselves to a higher level of cognizant awareness, to be better educated, to be able to seek something that is outside of force, trauma, and violence. I mean, at the end of the day, that would be a great place to be. And then what he's saying is, let's leave that up to the machines to deal with, not for us to deal with. I don't know. What say you, Andrew?
So, and I was trying to pull up actually some data on self-driving cars. Because listen, self-driving cars, like, yes, I know people, we've all seen the headlines of, like, and I was hoping to be able to pull this up before you turn this over to me, about how many accidents. I think it was only, from the hundreds of thousands of miles that self-driving cars have done, there's only been a small number of accidents, because machines are more reliable than humans in many cases. It's the same reason, like, I'm whenever anyone tells me that they're using anything else than Waze, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why would you use some kind of static, static data when you have live data that's thinking by the moment to adjust, the best pattern for you to go from point A to point B. Whereas, like other, GPS products, don't necessarily factor in all of the live data. So it's a matter of, I believe, when the computers are trained properly, when AI is trained properly, and this is in a perfect world, of course, assuming that Dick Jones is not programming actually the cops. When you have actually, when you have that perfect world and the data is being set up in the proper way, and the directives are being set up in the proper way, I think actually we could be safer. I think actually, I think there's a point. We're not there today. We're not there actually. We're not going to. We might not even be there in our lifetime. But at some point, there will be a point where machines will be able to factor in some sense of empathy based on actually some kind of data set. I don't know what that looks like or smells like, but that's my it's not today. But at some point, I think we'll hopefully be able to have that. Because I mean, the other thing is, I'm terrified of actually the people that I know that are on the job that are cops. I mean, really, for that matter, firefighters too. I am terrified for them, especially in today, the amount of risk that they take, because they're underappreciated. They're looked at like they're. I mean, yes, and there's some bad apples out there, but it's such a minority of the bad actors out there that are in a place of authority, that it scares me. Everyone else, all the the majority of police that are good and are doing good, and that really care about people and have that empathy, they're risking their lives every day. Like the people actually that are going actually into those calls for the pink houses projects in Brooklyn, they're taking their life in their hands, and that just scares me. And I would love to know actually a point where they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to risk their lives, to be able to, protect us.
Well, in my personal view, the last thing I would ever want to do is obviously take police off the streets, because I know there are a lot of police that are in those positions because that is something that they want to do. That's part of their livelihood. And so there's a part of me where artificial intelligence and machines begin to replace people's jobs. I feel safer to know that I have a human. I still stick with the same thing. Humans, you're never going to really be able to replace the ability to have certain feelings and certain levels of empathy, unless you're a human. I'm not saying that at some point in time, as you said, can artificial intelligence get there? Obviously, we've seen a lot of movies that get into that. Ex Machina. Another one was obviously AI, just to name a few. iRobot. There's a bunch of them out there. But the reality of
Runaway with Gene Simmons.
Say that again?
Runaway with Gene Simmons.
I mean, so, that would be the last thing that I would want to do. I don't feel quite there yet. And to speak to your point earlier about cars driving themselves, if you own a Tesla, you'll know that they could practically drive themselves. My brother-in-law just recently bought one. I think he bought the Model 3, I think it's called, X3, S3S, whatever. It's a fairly new version of the car. And he said, Paul, honestly, the car drives itself. He sets and forgets, and he gets where he needs to get to. That doesn't mean he can't take his hand off the wheel, because the car will tell him you need to keep your hand on the wheel. But for the most part, it's literally driving itself. There is a big leap of faith that comes with that. Now, many of the cars today have controls where it maintains distance from the car in front of you. If you go to make a signal and somebody's in your blind spot, it tells you right away. Those are good things to have. In fact, when you drive a car like that and then you revert back to a car that doesn't have those devices, those warning signals, and you've gotten used to it, it's an interesting thing. You realize, oh my gosh, I need to be hyper aware of what I'm doing. Yeah. And I mean, right down to backup cameras and parking and all that. So I get it. I see it's all part of the evolution of technology as well as our evolution as humans to adapt to that. Okay, part of it is us adapting to the technology as well, and it all kind of goes hand in hand, which is an interesting thing. But I think, and again, I want to go back to what was Jay's point of this, to raise some discourse. Or to, is there a hidden message in here that he's trying to get across? I think, as with all chapters we've read thus far in 30 Days of Thought, this again is still all about us as humans evolving to the next level, seeking a higher truth, finding a better version of ourselves, not being judgmental over others. Yeah. Who are we to be in a position of judging other people? And unfortunately, police officers are kind of stuck with that. They have to be able to make a decision, a well-informed decision, a very instinctual decision and reaction. And to me, yeah, I get it. If it's a machine, it's just very, very straightforward. But sometimes you need room for some gray area. You need room for we need to talk about this. We need to reason a little bit through this. So that's where I'm having my conflicts with that whole idea. I am not quite ready in my mind for that, but it doesn't mean that I don't have a sense of appreciation of what that could potentially be. It's just a matter of putting trust in artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah. Well, so let me is there any actually artificial intelligence that you do trust? Is there anything actually that you that you have confidence in?
Well, when you say that, I mean, look, I obviously use this each and every day. So there's obviously some artificial intelligence embodied in that device. Yeah. I mean, look, there are algorithms and programs and all kinds of things that are constantly being fed and machine learned. But all of it is what's the word I'm looking for? Is the result of data input. Okay, you've got somebody has to put the data into the machine. Now, if you have machines putting data into machines, that gets scary, because now that could be an evolution and a whole, plethora or Pandora's box of issues that can happen in accordance with that, right? That could be scary, where the machine starts to develop its own intelligence and making decisions on its own and literally thinking. Can you have machine consciousness? I don't know. There's a lot of talk out there. Let me just kind of set the stage here. We have people, some very, very smart people out there, and I'm going to pick on one guy just because he comes to mind. Two people come to mind. One is Sam Harris. The other one is Jordan Peterson. And these two guys go at it all the time. They have some level of agreement between the two of them. But a lot of the discussion always seems to go back around human nature, religion, and what that really means in the grand scheme of things, belief systems, and why those belief systems are important. And then juxtapose that with the idea of determinism. So free will it goes very much hand in hand with religion. Determinism does not, because determinism now is really getting into the point of view or philosophy that everything is already predetermined, but we are just unaware of it. Just like the next conversation you and I are going to have is going to be about the social dilemma. Speaking of being unaware.
Oh, God.
I just watched it, and I know you said you just started to watch it. Believe me, my son turned me on to that the other night. I watched it. And while some of it I'm not surprised, most of us are on the drip. And many of us are on the drip and don't even know what's going on while we're on the drip.
We're micro dosing endorphins.
I'm more afraid of that than I am of AI, in the sense of AI, because now what we're doing is we're allowing others, including artificial intelligence, to gauge everything that we're doing, every movement that we're making, every keystroke that we're doing. We're all submitting. We are all the product of it. Okay, the product is us, and we're feeding into the system, and then that system in turn tells us exactly and predicts. It's almost like becoming Laplace's demon, is able to predict what we're going to do in the future.
All right, so listen, social dilemma.
I'm sorry, I just have
I know. Like, by the way, last night I was watching it. I stayed right before I went to bed. I mean, I was almost crying in bed. I mean, not literally, but it scared the crap out of me.
You are a little bit of a baby like that, don't you?
I know. I mean, I believe actually Social Dilemma as that movie is a propaganda movie that has the makings to start a civil war. I mean, so
I know, and
we're not going to go there. We're not going to cover it on this.
No, let's leave it for the next discussion.
Yeah, okay? Next week, let's do this. So let's wrap this up, because we're talking on for 26 minutes, and both of our viewers are probably getting tired of us.
Yeah, maybe or maybe not, or maybe it's going to raise some question. But again, listen here. You can take two different viewpoints here. Clearly, there's probably good on both sides of the argument. At what point do we put AI in control? At what point do we do that? At what point do we just fork over and go, you know what, just go ahead, you guys handle it. We don't want to deal with it. I don't know, and frankly, it's a little bit frightening. But I am also a proponent of seeking the higher truth, of discovering the better version of ourselves, practicing good practices and measures that help our fellow man and woman, and all mankind, as one would say. That's what we need to really focus on. If it all contributes to more of a utopian society, great. The last thing we want is dystopia. That, to me, is where it can get really scary.
Yep, I agree. I think, I mean, listen, AI today is not actually the AI that we'll see tomorrow. AI today is great for specialty purposes. Whether it's determining, how to stay in lanes, determining actually if someone is a good underwriting risk for insurance or mortgage purposes. That's what creates specialty purposes. General purposes is not there yet. That's when we'll see it in the future. But all right, listen. So we are going to be switching formats. We're going to be we're going to be breaking away from the 30 days of thoughts, and I'm sure we're going to come back to this, because we've got a couple of chapters that we haven't gone over, a few chapters that we haven't gone over. There are ones I want to come back to because every time I look at this, I'm like, oh, I'd love to hit that back again, because I think we've grown up. Since the year and a half that we've been doing this, we've matured and advanced significantly. So I think there's things we should be going back, but we're going to be actually focusing on so this really this social dilemma. It is something that it is a scary thing. I'm worried about that. A really, really well made movie. There's no question about it. If you haven't seen it, watch it, please watch it. But just be prepared to understand actually that there is some brainwashing going on there. Anyway, thank you for watching. Paul, anything you want to say as we close this out?
No, I think you said everything, and I appreciate your comment about the growth that we've experienced. If Jay Doran, the author of 30 Days of Thought, is listening right now, he's probably beaming with a big grin, because that's the whole point of his book, is to promote growth and heightened awareness. And I think it's doing just that. So that's about all I got until our next session. I look forward to it.